You. What is the primary ingredient in a Wiggenweld potion?
I don't know, sir.
You don't know? Of course you don't. Well, anyone?
As I glanced around the room, my gaze lingered for a moment on the desk where she usually sat. She wasn't in my class again.
Miss Cooper, is there a reason for your classmates' repeated absences?
She's sick, Professor.
Unwell, is she? How convenient. Turn your textbooks to page 92. I expect you all to read it and produce a 3-page essay detailing what you have read.
I begin to look over some homework, but I find myself lost in thought again. My mind seems unwilling to let go of the events that occurred last night. Every time I try to focus on the words in front of me, my mind flickers to the memory of her eyes defiantly staring up at me in my office. I couldn't understand why she was affecting me so much. It was irrational, unprofessional, and completely unacceptable on my part, and yet the more I tried to push it away, the more it burrowed itself into my thoughts.
Class is finished. You're all dismissed.
Later that evening, I find myself leaning over a simmering cauldron. I carefully add a handful of powdered snake fangs to the potion, watching closely as it changes color. A hint of satisfaction washes over me as the potion takes on the desired consistency and color. It's almost perfect.
Bloody mugwort.
I exit my classroom and make my way down the dimly lit halls. My mood has soured considerably, already mentally chiding myself for the oversight. How could I have forgotten something as basic as mugwort? I frown, noticing that the door to the storeroom is slightly ajar. I slow my steps, silently approaching the room. I don't know who could possibly be in there at this time of the night, but I have a strong feeling I'm about to find out. My eyes widen slightly as I recognize the figure standing amongst the ingredients. Her back is to me as she peruses the jars and vials on the shelves. I stand in the doorway, unnoticed, my gaze taking in her form and the way the candlelight casts shadows against her skin.
Found anything interesting?
Shit.
Language. Care to explain why you're rummaging through my stores so late at night? And what happened to your sudden illness? You've been repeatedly missing classes under the guise of being sick. But here you are in perfect health. How interesting.
She bristles slightly at my words. She doesn't speak, but I can see the cogs turning in her mind, trying to come up with a plausible excuse.
Well, are you just going to stand there looking guilty?
I glanced down at the small jar in her hand, my eyebrows raising in slight surprise.
Hand it over.
I hold out my hand, gesturing for her to place the jar in my palm. She hesitates, clearly reluctant to hand it over. I give her a look that says, "Don't make me ask again." After a few more seconds, she reluctantly places the jar in my hand. My eyes then flicker to the door as I hear footsteps echoing down the hall.
Lupin! What a pleasant surprise.
Ah,
Professor.
Come here to steal from my stores as well, have we? Wolfsbane, perhaps?
A smirk appears on his lips. He's clearly not fazed by the accusation. His eyes then flicker between us, taking in the scene.
No, just having a bit of a nighttime stroll, Professor.
I glance over at her, noticing the wary look in her eyes. She seems unusually nervous, shifting awkwardly from foot to foot.
Yes. It appears my stores have become a popular spot for late-night visits.
I watch as Lupin's gaze remains locked on the girl beside me. He seems to be studying her intently, as if he's trying to figure something out.
Lupin?
I glance from Lupin to the girl and back again, feeling a faint sense of unease in the air. Something is off.
Lupin.
His eyes never leaving the girl's face. He seems to be sniffing the air subtly.
Are you quite all right?
There's a hint of something in his gaze that's making me feel on edge. I notice the subtle change in Lupin's eyes, the yellow almost glowing in the candlelight. I'd suddenly have a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. I shift subtly, moving to place myself between Lupin and the girl.
Remus, control yourself.
Lupin's eyes snap up to mine, and for a brief moment I see the werewolf staring back at me, feral and untamed. But then, as quickly as it appeared, it vanishes, and his eyes are back to their usual warm brown hue.
What the bloody hell has gotten into you?
Everything is perfectly fine, Professor. Nothing to be worried about.
I eye him skeptically, not convinced. I turn slightly to glance at the girl who is watching the scene unfold with wide eyes. I note the look of fear on her face, which is completely understandable considering what had just happened. However, there's something else in her expression that I can't quite place. I turn back to Lupin.
I think you had better leave.
Yes, I will. Good night.
I wait until he is completely out of sight before turning back to the girl.
You should go back to your dorm.
Okay.
She casts a quick glance back at me as she leaves. I watch her go, feeling a strange mix of emotions swirling within me.